G'day all, it's Aaron from Aaron's Weathering here. I thought I'd do a video on the different products and mediums I use for weathering. There's been a few comments left in some of the videos asking about it, so I thought I would go through it with you today. So starting off, you need to think how I'm going to weather this model. Is it going to be heavy weathered, light weathered, and do I need to do any prep work first? Now, with, say, locomotives, you obviously don't want paint on the windows, or you don't want paint or powder on a particular area of a model. Now, you want to protect it from that. So, first off, I've got a product called Mask Oil from Humbrol, and also a masking tape from Tamiya. Both these products are really effective in what they do, and they make a lot of time saving in regards to having to not worry about removing excess paint or powder or whatever the medium might be when it comes to the finishing of the model. Now, moving on from that, you've decided what you want to do with the model. You want to heavy weather it or you want to light weather it. You're going to need something for the powders to adhere to. Powders don't really do too well on smooth surfaces. So what I like to use are these camouflage paints by Krylon. Now, my go-to is a dark brown or a black. They have a very flat finish, as they suggest, ultra flat. Gives a really chalky finish to it, which is great for powders to adhere to. They key into the surface. If you were to look at it under a microscope, you would see there's a lot of hills and valleys in the finish of the paint. Now, if you didn't want something that's going to be heavy weathered, then you can always go for a flat clear. Again, it's going to have a nice rough surface for the powders to key into. Both Testors and Tamiya, they make a great product. It's in a spray can, but also you can get it in little jars as well. Now, moving on from that, once you've applied the base coat, as you would say, you would have a finish, say like this wagon, where I've gone over it completely with the dark brown, and from there I can start working from either powders or pencils to create the weathering effect, whether it be like a wood colour or a grimy colour, or something in that range where you want it to look, in a very weathered state. Another good product from Tamiya, what they call panel line accent colours. Now, these work really well in recesses, grooves, and it's a very thin paint, very water-like in texture, and a little bit goes a long way. It's fantastic for capillary actions. So for example, a wagon here, you can see that I've used it in the louvers. It's darkened up the louvers. I've used it around the doors here, and that has accentuated where those grooves are. Now, moving on from that, if you've done the panel line and you're moving on to the powders, this is where you want to start blending the powders with the substrate that you've applied. Now, again, Humbrol, they've got a fantastic range of colours that I like to use. These ones are an oil-based powder. What I really do like about these is the white powder stands out after, even when you've applied a matte finish. A lot of other acrylics or chalk powders, as soon as you apply a matte finish, they just disappear, and it can be really disappointing when you've done a really good weathering job and then you've gone to seal the finished model and you lose all that detail. Now, to help give that powder some contrast from the soft tones, you want to have something that's probably a little bit sharper, and that's where you can use acrylic pencils. I've got a lot of different colours for different scenarios. You can use the browns and oranges for rust. You can use the black for highlighting or accentuating dark areas. I also use the lighter colours to help fade paint. And also when it comes to rust, it's really fantastic in bringing to life the wagon to show like a really used in-service effect. So you got dark with light rust streaks on this wagon. Also, what I do like is with these pencils, if you sharpen the tip right down, it's great for showing writing on bogies, like it's been checked off by yardsmen, that the brake shoes have also been highlighted with rust, and that gives it a little bit more character as well for a wagon. Now, moving on from that, some of the more exotic products that I've come across over the years are these little acrylic paints, or they're acrylic paints mixed with dirt and other substrates. It's called Mud in a Pot. I found this at a exhibition a few years ago. The company is Reality and Scale. They've got a website with that, but when you open it up, what's really good about it, it's got a lot of texture to it. Now this can help really accentuate or give character to, say, a cattle wagon. What I've done here is you can see that I've sort of replicated what looks like cow excrement from it. So yeah, it gives that extra bit of character to the wagon. So let's just go back onto powders. This wagon here, I've used a lot of powders, and you can also see there's some panel lining amongst that. Powders are really great for helping give character and texture to a internal of the open wagon here. As you can see, I've helped to give the rust effect and in-traffic look to it. With the powders, there's also, you don't have to just rely on, say, Humbrol. There is another brand of powders called Conti. These are a French-made acrylic pastel. They come in dozens and dozens of different colours. This one is a grey assortment pack. What's really good about them is they can be ground up in a coffee grinder, and what happens is the final finish gives you this very fine powder, and from there you can use your brush, you can take the powder and start applying it to the surface of the wagon that you're working on or locomotive. From there, depending on where you're going with the weathering, you can also make your own washes up. So again, you can use, say, a brown, and with that you can mix it with an acrylic thinner, mix it right down, and then start applying a wash. Washes are really good to help accentuate, again, divots and curves like the panel line paint, but also it also can leave a brown or a black or whatever surface finish across the whole of the wagon or model. You can also use the acrylic with the pencils, and with the acrylic you can apply, say, a powder in the acrylic thinners, and then brushing it off on the pencil, you can then apply it to the surface that you're working on. Now, some of the tools that I use for applying the powders, I've got these soft bristle brushes. What I do to some of them is I'll trim them down to make the brush tips a little bit, give it more stipple. But I've got various sizes, from a large round head for applying large amounts of powder. And then I've got a broad flat brush, and then I work my way down from this flat to a very fine tip to get in little nooks and crannies. And then I have my various stipple brushes if I need to really enforce some powder into an area that is difficult with a soft brush to get the powder to adhere to that area. Also, if you want to rub back paint like stripes and the likes, you can always use a fiberglass brush. I demonstrated that in one of my videos on the butter boxes in rubbing back some of the writing and the paint that was on the model itself. Now, once you've finished the whole model, you're happy with your results, it's now time to seal the model. Now, what you have to be careful of is that sometimes if you use the flat clear in a can or from a bottle straight off, it can actually be detrimental as far as you can lose what you've put into the model. Now, what I've found is I use this Tester's dull coat, and I've thinned it down 3 parts thinners to 1 part of the dull coat, and I use that in an airbrush to apply on the model to give it a final finish. And I'll do, say, 2 coats, very fine layers, giving time between the 2 of them to dry. And that will seal the model so you'll be able to pick it up without leaving fingerprints on the model. So that is my basic 101 in weathering. Any further tutorials that I do, I'm certainly going to explain what I'm using and how I'm using it. And if you've got any further queries, please leave a comment below in the video, and I'll be happy to answer it. So that's it for today. Stay tuned for more weathering. The next video I'm going to concentrate on weathering some containers by SDS models. Thank you very much.